What if I told you that after the Australian Grand Prix the FIA found something in George Russell's car that no one expected, and that even left Lewis Hamilton completely surprised? Because while many thought that the start of the season had just been another race on the calendar, information began to circulate within the paddock that changed the conversation. The FIA reviewed certain aspects of the number 63 Mercedes again after what happened in Melbourne, and what seemed like a simple incident ended up becoming a much bigger story than we imagined. It all started with a series of situations over the weekend that put Russell's car on the steward's radar. First, an incident in the pit lane that forced cameras, radios, and team data to be reviewed, and then a maneuver on the track that was not allowed according to the race director's notes. What seemed like a minor error ended up prompting a complete review by the FIA, something that immediately raised suspicions within the paddock. But this is where the story gets really interesting. Because while Mercedes tried to downplay the issue, many within Formula One began to wonder if this case hid something deeper about the car's behavior. And the most striking thing is that this situation broke out just when Lewis Hamilton was living his new stage with Ferrari, observing from the sidelines how his old team was once again at the center of the technical attention of the championship. So the big question is inevitable. What exactly did the FIA see in Russell's car in Australia? And why did this situation end up generating such an impact within the paddock? Because what initially seemed like a minor incident during the Australian Grand Prix sessions began to raise more and more questions among the teams, the engineers, and the drivers themselves. The FIA had put several actions related to George Russell's car under review, and although at first many thought that these were simply routine procedures, the reality is that the analysis was much more detailed than usual. It all goes back to one of the weekend sessions in Melbourne, when Russell performed a maneuver in the pit lane that immediately caught the attention of the stewards. The Briton tried to join the fast lane just when another car was already occupying that line, which caused contact between both cars. On a street circuit like Albert Park, where space in the pit area is extremely limited and maneuvers must be executed with millimeter precision, any mistake can lead to dangerous situations. For this reason, the stewards decided to analyze the incident with special attention, reviewing circuit cameras, onboard images, and the Mercedes team's radio communications to reconstruct exactly what happened. Russell himself later explained that visibility at that time was difficult due to the position of the sun over the circuit. According to the pilot, the painted marks on the asphalt that indicated the correct area were difficult to see, so he used the rubber marks left by previous braking as a reference. However, by reviewing the images from different angles, the stewards determined that the car was clearly ahead of the authorized area and was even beyond the protection of the pit wall at the time of starting the practice start. The FIA then decided to issue a formal warning to the driver and the team. Although they acknowledged that visibility conditions could have influenced the error, they also recalled that the race director's notes had been clear regarding the exact location where these maneuvers should be performed. Therefore, the message from the stewards was forceful. Even in ambiguous situations, teams must ensure that their drivers strictly respect the established instructions to avoid incidents or undue advantages during the race weekend. While all this was happening, Mercedes' performance on the track was beginning to attract attention for very different reasons. Russell was showing a solid competitive level at the start of the season and was establishing himself as the team's natural leader after Lewis Hamilton's departure for Ferrari. The Briton was in a key position within the Mercedes project, since he not only had to fight for immediate results, but also helped the team to continue developing the car in a season that was shaping up to be extremely competitive. In parallel, Hamilton's situation added an interesting emotional component to this entire story. The seven-time world champion had just started his new stage with Ferrari, one of the most shocking decisions in the recent history of Formula One. However, his debut with the Italian team in Australia was not easy. The Briton had to face a complex adaptation process to the behavior of the Ferrari, in addition to dealing with difficult track conditions and strategic decisions that complicated his final result. Therefore, seeing Mercedes again under the FIA spotlight inevitably generated comments within the paddock. Hamilton knows the structure of Brackley better than anyone, knows how the team works in pressure situations, and fully understands what it means when the FIA begins to analyze in detail any aspect related to the car. Even when investigations don't end in serious sanctions, the simple fact of being under review can generate a chain of questions that quickly spreads between rival teams. And in Formula One, where every millisecond counts and every technical innovation can make the difference between winning or losing a championship, any doubt about the behavior of a car automatically becomes a topic of enormous interest. This is how what happened with Russell's Mercedes in Australia went from being a seemingly minor incident to a story that began to circulate throughout the paddock, fueling rumors, technical analysis and speculation about what was really happening behind the scenes at one of the most important teams in the championship. But the most interesting thing of all is that this was only the beginning of the story. Because what many within the paddock began to wonder after the FIA's decisions was whether these incidents were simply operational errors during a difficult weekend, or if they were actually revealing something much deeper about the behavior of the Mercedes at the start of the season. Because beyond the reprimands and warnings issued by the FIA, the true impact of this story was not in the sanction, but in the message it left for the rest of the season. The review of George Russell's car demonstrated something that many within Formula One already suspected. In such a tight championship, any detail, no matter how small it may seem, can become a determining factor in the battle between the teams. Mercedes, which dominated the category for years, is experiencing a new stage in which every technical progress and every strategic decision is crucial to regain its position on the grid. In this context, Russell has become the sports leader of the project. With Lewis Hamilton now at Ferrari, the Briton carries the responsibility of guiding the team both on and off the track on his shoulders, something that is already reflected in his central role within Mercedes' technical structure and in the results he has begun to obtain at the start of the championship. But the story also has another silent protagonist, Lewis Hamilton. From the other side of the paddock, the 7-time world champion watches as his former team continues to be the protagonist of the championship's technical conversations. His arrival at Ferrari marked one of the most important changes in the recent history of Formula One, but the beginning of this new stage has been more complex than expected. In Australia, it became clear that adaptation to the Ferrari requires time, adjustments in driving style and in-depth work with the team to fully understand the behavior of the car. Therefore, when news emerged about the revisions to Russell's Mercedes, many within the paddock began to wonder how this situation would influence the competitive balance between the teams. Although the FIA made it clear that there was no serious technical irregularity and that the incidents were related to procedures during the sessions, the fact that the car was under analysis once again placed Mercedes under the media spotlight of the championship. And this is where the true conclusion of this story appears. In modern Formula One, battles are not only fought on the track. They are also developed in the commissioners' rooms, in the technical departments, and in every detail of the regulations. Teams are constantly looking for small advantages, interpretations of the regulations, or operational improvements that can make a difference in a championship that is usually decided by minimal margins. What happened to Russell's car in Australia is a perfect reminder of that reality. It was not a technical scandal or a case of illegality, but it did demonstrate how every movement within a race weekend can be analyzed with a magnifying glass by the FIA and rivals. In an environment where the pressure is maximum and where everyone is looking for any opportunity to gain an advantage, even a simple incorrect procedure can become a central issue within the paddock. Furthermore, this episode leaves an open question for what is to come in the championship. Mercedes is trying to rebuild its path towards the fight for the title, Ferrari is looking to consolidate the project that Hamilton now leads, and teams like McLaren or Red Bull continue to push from the front of the grid. With so many forces competing at the same time, any detail, a strategic decision, a technical improvement, or even an FIA investigation can upset the balance between the teams. So what happened in Australia could end up being remembered not only as an isolated incident at the start of the season, but as the first moment in which Russell's Mercedes once again placed itself at the center of the technical analysis of the championship. And in Formula One, when a car starts to attract the attention of the FIA and rivals, it usually means that something important is starting to happen. And so we come to the conclusion of this whole story that began at the Australian Grand Prix. What initially seemed like a simple incident during the weekend sessions ended up becoming one of the first moments of technical tension of the season. The FIA review of George Russell's car did not reveal any illegality or serious irregularity, but it did make it clear that every action within a Formula One weekend can be analyzed in extreme detail by the stewards and rival teams. In a championship where the differences between teams are increasingly smaller, procedures, decisions, and even operational errors can have important consequences. What happened to Russell was a combination of circumstances. An incident in the pit lane and a practice start outside the designated area that ended up under review. The FIA decided to resolve the case with a reprimand and a formal warning, making it clear that it was not a technical problem for Mercedes, but rather situations that should not be repeated in the future. However, the true impact of this episode is in the context of the championship. Mercedes is in a rebuilding process after several years trying to regain its dominant position, and George Russell is now the central figure in that project. His results and his role within the team have made him one of the most important drivers of this new stage for the German team. At the same time, this story also inevitably connects with Lewis Hamilton. The 7-time world champion has begun a new era at Ferrari, one of the most important movements that Formula One has experienced in recent years. His debut with the Italian team in Australia was more of a learning process than a demonstration of his true potential, but it made it clear that there is still a lot of work ahead for Ferrari and Hamilton to reach their maximum competitive level. That's why the fact that Mercedes was once again under the FIA spotlight during the same weekend generated so much attention within the paddock. In modern Formula One, where each team seeks any possible advantage within the regulations, every technical review and investigation immediately becomes a topic of debate among engineers, analysts, and fans. What happened to Russell's car in Australia is a reminder of how this sport really works. It is not always about big scandals or dramatic sanctions. Sometimes, the moments that generate the most conversation arise from small details, from decisions made in seconds, or from situations that occur outside the rules. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.